In this lecture, we're going to see how you work with ListView and ListModel in Qt Quick. ListView is going to display our data. ListModel is going to control how we store our data. We're going to go to Qt Creator and start working with this. Here we are in Qt Creator. We're going to create our project. It's a Qt Quick application as usual. We're going to call it ListView, ListModel Demo. Choose our Qt version. Choose our kit and finish. We're going to change the title here to say ListView. We want to start by putting a ListView component inside. We're going to give it an ID. It's going to fill the parent. And we need to specify a model property and a delegate property for it. We're not going to specify that right now. What we want to do is come to the documentation and look at this. ListView in here. It displays data from models created from built-in QML types like ListModel and XML ListModel. We are going to look at XML ListModel later. Now we want to focus on ListModel. A ListView has a model which defines the data to be displayed, and a delegate which defines how the data should be displayed. Items in a ListView are laid out horizontally or vertically. ListViews are inherently flickable because ListView inherits flickable. So you don't need to wrap your elements in a flickable component to be able to scroll through more content. A flickable is built in by default. Okay, now that you have a better idea on the ListView, how do we specify the model or the delegate? Let's start by the model. We are going to use the ListModel component. We want to give it an ID of model ID and model ID. And we want to specify it here so that we get rid of this error here. I don't really like this. So model ID. Let's comment this delegate first so that we get rid of these errors. Okay, we have our list model here. We need a way to put in the data that should be displayed by the list view. And for that, to use a list element. Let's look at that in the documentation. List element. Let's look at more. List elements are defined inside list model and represent items in a list that will be displayed using list view or repeater. You put in the data like this. You wrap your data in list element. What I am going to do is come back to the code here and put in a bunch of list elements that I had prepared to save you some typing, but it really is easy. You have a list element component and you specify your attributes and the values for your attributes. In QML, these are called roles, but you can call it whatever you want. The important thing is that you know how to use it. So we have our model, and it has a list of items that should be displayed by the view that we're going to attach to this model. And the model has two data sets. One is for the country that you specify like this, and the other is the capital of the country that you specify like this. Notice that your attributes here can really be anything. I specified country and capital here because that's what I want to work with in this lecture. But as you see in the lecture here, you can really put in anything. They have name and cost. Depending on what you are designing for, you're going to have different things defined in here. Okay, now we have our list model. And you might not believe it, but this is all you need to have a model that you can display in a view. The next thing we want to define is the delegate. How do you define this? We're going to go to the bottom of the model and say component. So far, we have used components as external QML files, but you can also define an inline component like this. Okay, it is the same thing. We want to give it an ID. It's going to be delegate ID. Inside, we want to put a rectangle component. Let's give it an ID as well. Rectangle ID. We give it a width that is equal to the parent width, give it a height of 50, and we give it a color of beige. We want the border color of yellow green and a radius of 10 on this rectangle here. So we have the rectangle. We want a way to display some text inside. So we want to put in a text component, give it an ID of text ID. We want it centered in the parent, and we want it to have a point size of 20. Let's try this. Okay, now we are going to see something important. From the component here, that is our delegate. By the way, we can come back to the top here and specify our delegate because we have it now. So we can say delegate ID. When you type the model and the delegate and the view like this in the list view, something important happens. You can access data in the model directly without doing anything else. So for example, what we can do, we can access the country and the capital attributes from the current element that we are displaying in the delegate ID. So what I want to do now, I want to say text. It is going to be country plus, let's put a colon in the middle and say capital. Notice that these are the attributes in the model that we are accessing. Okay, we didn't need to do anything else. We are able to do this because these things are tied together in the list view like this. Right now, we can run the application and see what it looks like. Let's run it. Okay, you see that we have a list of elements and we have countries and capitals. I want to shrink the height of this thing, and you see that we are able to scroll to see the data. Okay, so if you have more data than can be displayed in the available window, you can scroll to see things. This is the effect of the built-in flickable component that is in the list view. And this is really how you work with a list view and a list model. You define your list view like this, and you give it some positioning as you would do for any component. In this case, we wanted to fill the parent. And you give it a model by specifying the ID of the model. Our model is nothing special. It's a bunch of list elements wrapped in a list model component. And our delegate is a custom component like this. And inside we have a rectangle that contains a text element that is going to contain the attributes of the list element in our case. Another thing you can do is make the list element inside the list view clickable. The way you do that, you can put a mouse area in the delegate. So let's say mouse area. We want it to fill the parent. And the parent is going to be this delegate rectangle here. So we're going to say on click, console log, clicked on. We want to say the capital. Remember that we are still in the delegate, so we can access these things without a problem. Put in a colon and say country. Let's run. We have our thing here, and if I click on Rwanda here, you see that I clicked on Kigali, Rwanda. Let's click on Paris, France, Uganda, Kampala, Uganda. And ladies and gentlemen, this is how you work with the list view and the list model. The list view controls how you display your data, and the list model controls how your data is saved. And the delegate controls how each data item is displayed in the view. The delegate is this rectangle here. Notice that the decoration that we put on the delegate is here. This is the font size that we specified here. This is the color beige, that is the background. This is the yellow-green border color that we specified here. You can control all these aspects of how your elements are displayed in the delegate element that you tie to your list view. I hope this makes sense. Okay, I have used my delegate as an external component just to show you that you can do this. But we can also make this inline, and I also want you to see that. So I am going to copy the rectangle inside our component here. Select it, copy it, and I'm going to comment it out. Okay, so we don't need it anymore in what we're going to do. And what we can do is come here, comment this out, because I want you to keep this for reference. We can say delegate and paste in our rectangle in line like this, and it's going to work the same. Let's run. And you see that it is the same thing. Click on India, New Delhi. You see that things are the same as they were before. You can specify your delegate or your model in line like this if you want to. This is all I had to say in this lecture. I hope you have a better idea of how you work with list views and list models to display your data. In the next lecture, we're going to see how you work with direct models. I'll see you there.